Firefighters battling wildfires in Canada risk their lives to ensure communities stay safe. But according to one expert, they're not being protected themselves. The unpredictable nature of fire is a risk firefighters face on the job, but so is breathing in toxic fumes, a factor the public may be less likely to consider. Neil McMillan, Director of Science and Research for the International Association of Firefighters, told CTV that these firefighters are exposed to a great level of smoke and that this exposure can have an impact that lasts well beyond the end of the current wildfire season. One of the issues, he said, is a lack of access to proper protections. The remote nature of wildfires is part of the problem because the equipment needs to be easy to transport and to be wearable and functional over long periods of time. A study by researchers at BC's University of Fraser Valley in 2020 found that cancer is the leading cause of death among all firefighters in Canada. Joining us now to discuss what risks firefighters in Canada are currently facing is Mr. Neil McMillan himself. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
What is the current state of Canada's firefighting service, considering multiple deaths in the past few weeks?
Well, generally speaking, the firefighter community, including the IAFF and our members, are reeling from the deaths suffered by the wildland firefighting community. We are a tight group, of service providers. So these deaths have affected all of us.
We've heard some firefighters are using bandanas as facial protection during missions. Is this the case for all firefighters? Can you tell us what is missing in terms of protection and safety equipment?
If we compare the conditions that maybe a municipal fire service may be facing when dealing with a structure fire, we can operate with self-contained breathing apparatuses. However, the varied terrain and the different areas and geographies where these wildfires are occurring makes it prohibitive to drag heavy equipment with limited use timeframes into those locations. So yes, unfortunately, our members and others that serve in the wildland firefighter environment and the wildland urban interface environment are resorting to things such as bandanas and N95s to try to get some protection from particulate, but knowing that there is no protection from many of the toxic chemicals and gases that unfortunately are associated with those wildfire environments.
We hear a lot of talk about air quality from the wildfire smoke. How is a lack of proper protection and direct exposure to forest fire smoke impacting the health of firefighters this season?
Well, it is impacting them greatly, whether it's a wildfire that's encroached into the urban areas in Halifax or on the West Coast. Our members are going to do what they have to do to mitigate those emergency situations. But when they're facing these smoke exposures, it impacts their ability to perform. It impacts, their ability to operate safely in those environments. And also, ultimately, these wildfire smoke exposures do transcend to urban environments and rural environments where citizens are affected. So if we are able to get proper respiratory protection for firefighters, ultimately that will serve the best health interests of citizens and communities that eventually get affected by those wildfires.
So, what is the state of morale among the firefighting service? How is this impacting recruitment and retention?
Firefighters have a job to do. They take an oath and they're going to do that job, whether it's municipal firefighters, members of the IAFF, or otherwise. Recruitment and retention speaks generally to a greater overall concern about understaffing. And that's understaffing in many of our IAFF locals. Those larger firefighting centers, can and should serve as resources for wildland firefighting operations and urban interface deployments. Yet I can see how employers or municipalities may be hesitant to release, our members for duty in these areas when they're operating in understaffing and low shortages of firefighters. So additional efforts for increased staffing and retention of firefighters is important to address some of these wildfire concerns that we're seeing this year.
With wildfires expected to get worse, how important is it for Canada to bolster its firefighting efforts rather than rely on international partners? We have 30 seconds.
Very important, and we're exceptionally happy for the help that we've received from international partners. We're also pleased with the Member of Parliament Bill Blair and Jonathan Wilkinson for their support of the federal government's funding, to the IAFF training for wildland urban interface. So, our training models can be used and adapted to address these concerns, but very important.
Thank you so much for your time.